Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. Welcome to this bonus episode of the Joy of Cruising podcast. You know, when a renowned comedian makes himself available to chat with us, we find a way to fit him into the schedule. I am delighted to welcome comedian Billy D. Washington. Those of you who have cruised Carnival, specifically the beautiful new Mardi Gras or Celebration, have seen him late night in Punchliners or with your kids at the family-friendly show. We took my granddaughter on Mardi Gras for her 13th birthday. We watched Billy D at the family-friendly show on more than one occasion. And then we watched every version of Billy D's uncensored sets in Punchliners. He was hilarious, and what set him apart was his delivery, timing, and total unpredictability. He took funny stories in directions I totally did not expect. He killed. I've always been interested in the entertainment aspect of the cruise experience, especially music and stand-up comedy. In The Joy of Cruising, I included a section called Performing on the Ocean. And then when we cruised Mardi Gras with 4 comedians, a first for me in my cruising experience, I was fortunate to be introduced to Billy D. Washington. They were all funny. Billy D. Washington distinguished himself from the others by interspersing music by way of a keyboard, and he was very good at it. Lastly, he had a unique and impressive background. Appearances on HBO, Comedy Central, he was a regular host on VH1, and much more. And he even once had a career in law enforcement. Billy D. Washington, welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Good to see you, Paul, or hear you.
So how you doing?
I'm good, man. Good, hopefully the weather holds up today because I have a comedy festival to get to tonight, and it's a outdoor event, so we'll see what happens. But Houston weather.
Oh, that sounds nice. I have a best friend in Houston, and I sent him a link of your festival. So.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah, tell them to come through. It's going to be fun.
Yep. So tell us about Billy D. Washington. Where you from? Where you live? Anything you want to share?
Oh, I'm from Houston, Texas, and right now I live in a suburb of Houston called Spring, Texas, and I've lived here all my life. I've had brief stints in LA and New York, but it was all while still having a house here. So that's it, man. I'm a Houston, Texas boy, man, born and bred.
From your show on Mardi Gras, I kind of want to ask you a question, but I know that I might alienate some listeners. What do you think about the Dallas Cowboys?
Bruh, come on, don't even, you know what? The Dallas Cowboys are a weekend at Bernie's. They try to tell us every year that they're alive. They roll that dead body out there every year, man, but at the end of the season, it's always the same result. That body is still cold.
I said I didn't want to alienate any listeners, and I did it anyway.
Yeah, man. They're getting worse and worse. I mean, I think their window is closed for them to win 2 playoff games. So, the Super Bowl ain't never been, I don't think they'll ever win another Super Bowl. For the next 20 years. But, bro, that's done. That's done. I am the biggest Dallas Cowboy hater, as you already know, in NFL sports history.
So all across the country, people are clicking end on their podcast.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, they're listening. They're turning it up. That's what they're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you either love them or you hate them.
So when I introed you, I mentioned how you differentiated yourself from a number of other really good comedians that I saw on Mardi Gras by interspersing an electric piano. I know it plays a small part, but a very powerful role in your act. You clearly can play. Talk a little bit about your background in music.
I mean, music was first, man. Like my parents gave me piano lessons when I was a kid, and I started playing the piano at churches when I was 11 years old, and I played all through school. I was a award-winning high school musician for three different instruments: piano, trombone, and tuba. And when I went to college, man, I had like four different bands. I had my college band, I had my band with my friends, I had my church band, and when I became a police officer, man, I had my cop band. So the music was always first, and I
Hmm.
love it. And I'm basically a musician that does stand-up comedy.
Hmm. When you brought it out, I've seen stand-up comedians, and they bring out little musical instruments, and it's kind of a novelty part of the act. But as soon as you started playing, I said, "Oh no, this brother can play."
Yeah, that's always a surprise, man. That's why I always save it for my last show. And I tell people to make sure you come to my last show because you're going to see something at that show that people are going to talk about the next day and you're going to hate that you missed it. And hopefully I deliver on that. I could do the whole set, without, because I only played for like, I do 2.5 hours of material on these cruise ships. And I basically only play 15 minutes of it. But, when I first started, I played, that's all I did is play piano. And
Hmm.
then I started to see people's monologues, and I had stuff to say on stage. So then I put the piano away completely and just started to work on monologues and study monologues and how to really stand up in front of the people. And at first I was using it as a crutch, but then I went like 4 years without playing it at all. But when I had buyers who remembered that I played the piano, they were like, you can make a whole lot more money if you integrated your keyboard back into what you do on stage. So maybe 5 years in, I started playing the piano again. And then that's when I started headlining across the country.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, I first saw you last year. I guess it was August. First saw you live last year, but I saw you many years before that on HBO's Def Comedy Jam, a comedy institution. Can you say a little bit about that?
Oh man, Paul, if you remember, bro, I mean, like, for the kids who don't know, like, the Def Comedy Jam was the Game of Thrones in that day. It was the most popular, you know, cable television show in the history of cable television for over a decade. I mean, even after it went off the air, it was still had the record for the most popular cable TV program in history, in television history. So when I did it, man, it
Hmm.
changed my career. I mean, just in terms of like even now, like, stuff that happened back then still reverberates in my career. Like right now, I was the first dude from Texas to even be on there. So when I was going to be on there, in Houston, they did like radio stuff. I had an interview in Houston for my first appearance on there. So everybody's watching. The pressure was immense, but the payoff has paid dividends for, next year, man, it'll be 30 years. And I did it three times, and each time was more special than the one before. But I mean, just in terms of talking about peaking too early, oh my God, it was like the second biggest thing that ever happened in my career.
Hmm. You said second biggest thing. What's the first?
Oh, the first was touring with Aretha Franklin. That was the big. I toured with Aretha Franklin for 2 years on her last national headlining tour, and those were some of the that was the best stuff that ever happened in my career. I got to meet all the celebrities. I got to play every major venue in the country. I got to stay in the fanciest five-star hotels in my career, and plus I got to hang out with the best, vocalist of all time, on a nightly basis, and hear her stories about Martin Luther King and BB King
Hmm.
and the civil rights movement and her father and her brother and her tragedy and her victories, and just to be able to be associated with someone who's so legendary, and to have me bring her into her inner circle, has been, up until this point, the highlight of my career.
Man, I'm a new podcaster, but I'm really hitting the jackpot lately. The podcast I just did, I had someone who toured with Ray Charles and the Rolling Stones, and now
Oh,
I have
wow.
somebody who toured with Aretha Franklin.
Bruh.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have like entertainers have stuff that other people think that's important. Like they'll go, "Oh, why don't you have a Netflix special or an HBO special, or why don't you have a movie or a TV show?" And all that's cool, for whatever your expectation is. But to be on a nightly basis, man, with somebody that legendary, and to be able to hang out with them, and like I said, to be able to know them and their friends, and for her to be able to call you family is bigger, even if not more lucrative. It's
Hmm.
bigger than any television show or any special I could ever do.
Hmm. Just as an aside, how'd you like the movie?
You know what? I don't really watch them. I don't really watch them because I don't want to judge these people based on what I already know. So I
Uh-huh.
haven't. The only thing that I've watched on TV from Miss Franklin was Amazing Grace, and it was the documentary piece and the gospel concert that she did, and back in the '70s with James Cleveland.
Uh-huh.
But other than that, man, I
Uh-huh.
haven't seen any fictional accounts because, like, I didn't
Okay.
know her when she was young. Obviously, I only knew her for 2 years, but I'm not really interested in seeing somebody else be her. I already know her, so I ain't.
Right,
I don't.
right,
I'm not
right,
interested
right.
in it.
You were already too close to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Changing the subject a little bit, I would be remiss in having you on without getting your thoughts about the Will Smith slap.
Oh man, you and everybody else. Uh, so when I first saw it, I didn't believe it. But then when it finally settled in, I said to myself that this is, first of all, the most infamous moment in comedy history. I mean, it's the equivalent of Sidney Poitier slapping Richard Pryor at the Oscars. Think about that. Will we still be talking about that 40 years later? We certainly would still be talking about that. So,
Uh-huh.
for the next half a century, we're going to still be talking about, what happened. Now, in terms of the actual event, I'll borrow a line from Chris Rock's Bring the Pain. And one of his most famous lines when he was talking about the O.J. Simpson trial, and he said, I'm not saying that he should have did it, but I understand. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that Will should have slapped Chris Rock, but I understand why he did it. I
Hmm.
mean, as a married family man, whatever, if my wife has some some sort of condition that she's embarrassed about and that she's very sensitive about. And, if somebody says something on national TV about her in her presence, in arguably the biggest televised event of the year, then I'm probably going to have some type of response to it. I'm not going to say that I'm going to
Hmm.
slap them, and I'm not going to say I do it
Hmm.
in public. But again,
Hmm.
I'm saying that if I'm not saying he should have did it, but I understand.
Hmm. I'm 99% on the side of Chris Rock in that situation, but I do find it hard to believe that he had no idea about her condition.
Kind of hard to believe. And plus, man, one of the basic rules of stand-up comedy is to know your audience, is to read the room, And I
Hmm.
most people disagree with me, when it comes to that, man. I did radio interviews and whatever, and I've had arguments with people about it. I love Chris, man. I think Chris is one of the top five comedians of all time. I met his mother recently.
Hmm.
I think Tony Rock is one of the funniest and one of the most underrated comedians working today. Love that whole family. But in terms
Hmm.
of what it was, man, it's like you bear some type of responsibility for what every time you get on that
Hmm.
stage, you bear some type of responsibility. You saw me, I don't know what cruise you
Hmm.
were on, but I was on one cruise with a guy who went into an audience and he said some stuff and he was playing around with an audience member, but the audience member didn't get upset about it. Somebody else got upset about it. And so, even though he got in trouble for it, and even though I sympathize with him, it's like at the end of the day, we're responsible for these opinions of these people. Now, what you want to do with that responsibility,
Hmm.
that's up to you. If you want to blow it off and blame it on them,
Hmm.
that's cool, because most of the time it's their fault anyway. In this situation, that was Will Smith's fault anyway. It's Chris Rock. If you want to blow it off, then that's cool. But if you want to take this as a learning experience and go, yo, the next time I'm in that situation, it's probably not a good idea to talk about a man's wife right in front of him, in this type of disparaging way, then that's the decision that you make. But as a performer, especially as a comedian, it's ultimately up to you. And whatever happened as a result of anything, whether you get booed or whether you get a standing ovation, at the end of the day, you have to follow. You have to ask, where did the conflict start? And the conflict started when he said what he said. Not saying that Will Smith should have slapped him, but I understand.
Well, we'll come back to Chris Rock in a minute, but subsequent to that, I think it was after that, you had an audience member try to attack Dave Chappelle, and then I saw an audience member throw a can of beer at a stand-up comedian, and she, like a champ, picked up the beer and started drinking it. and recently on Royal Caribbean, an audience member rushed the stage at a magician show. Say something about that trend. Has anything like that, anything even approaching that happened with you?
And people have been like attacking comedians for years. If you get a chance, there's a guy by the name of Kenny Moore. And in comedy club circles, man, Kenny Moore is a hero, because this may have been the late 80s, early 90s. The video is called El Kabong. You get a chance, it's a YouTube video called El Kabong. And in the video, Kenny Moore goes back and forth with an audience member. And then the audience member says, I'll come up there and kick your ass. Now, Kenny Moore is playing the guitar at this time. He got the guitar with him and playing it on his knee. And then the guy approaches the stage to get on stage with Kenny Moore, and Kenny grabs that guitar and hits him in the head with it. Now, it sounds like too much violence to watch. But when you watch it, bro, it's more funny than anything else, just because of the audience's reaction. But it's been happening for years. It just now gotten to now celebrities are starting to be, get this type of exposure. But for just like regular funny people, headlining comedians all over the country, yes, I've been attacked on stage. Man, once I cut a dude with a beer bottle in Pensacola, Florida.
Wow.
Because he charged the stage after he was in the back. He called me the N-word, and I said something about his wife as it pertains to it. So he charged the stage, and when I saw him coming, I broke the beer bottle on my mic stand, and when he came at me, I nicked him on the neck with the beer bottle. And when these dudes get all liquored up and whatever, they know when it's enough. And when he saw his own blood, the whole thing was over. It's a big deal, man. Police came out to the situation. The whole audience was on my side and said that I was the one who had been attacked, and that guy ended up going to jail. So it's been going on for a while. So it ain't nothing new. It's just now getting in the news, So no. So yes, it has happened. No, it is not new, but I just never seen it, celebrity on celebrity before.
Wow, that's quite a story. You've seen a lot. Have you ever considered doing a memoir?
I have, but I just don't think people would be that interested in it, man. I'll be honest. You probably got 20,000 quote unquote comedians that have wrote books on, what they've done. And, and you can't, the only ones that people read are the ones from famous people. I am working on a book because I love fiction writing. And the book is called Very Unusual Stories. And it's basically, it's going to be a book of short stories. And there's going to be some of my history is going to be interspersed within these stories. And I'll set up each story with the background before I write it. But because that's what happens to me. Like there'll be one thing to happen, and then I'll come up with a whole other thing in my head as to what it, the way I want to tell the story. That's what that book is going to be about. And I'm currently working on that right now.
Now, speaking of writing, it seems that I read somewhere that you've written some plays?
Plays, films. I've written 14 plays. I wrote a film that was aired on BET last year during Halloween. Again, I write fiction, man. I typically write horror. Like it's more like psychological thriller / light horror. but it's all this twisty, kind of dark. I mean, you see what I do on stage, and it's basically what I do on stage is basically a microcosm of who I am as a multimedia creator. I mean, I love to take people one direction and then snatch them, someplace completely different. And so, that's who I was as a playwright. That's who I am as a playwright. That's who I am as a filmmaker. And yeah, man, I've been writing for as long as I've been entertaining.
I'm glad you said that about you take them in a different direction, because when I introduced you, that's exactly what I said. I said, what distinguishes you from others besides your keyboard playing is you're totally unpredictable. You go in one direction with a funny story, but it doesn't end like I would have guessed it would end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much by design. I mean, sometimes there's a natural ending to a story that's funny enough. But if anybody predicts what I'm going to say, for me, then I feel defeated. If I feel like somebody yells out a punchline before I get to it, oh my God, I don't like it at all. So
Hmm.
that's why I pretty much reverse engineer when I write. I know where I'm going to end up, but I want to, establish the route. I want to take the circuitous path in order to get there. I don't want to take
Hmm.
them straight there. I
Hmm.
want to take them to another place and make a left turn instead of making a right turn to get there. I want to make a left turn to get there.
Hmm. Now, I want to go back to Chris Rock, but before I do, the film that aired, could you say the name of it so I can check it out and the audience can check it out?
Yeah, it's called The Pillowcase, and it was on BET Her. And dude, so I'll get alerts where it's up and then it's down, and then it's up and then it's down. But it's called The Pillowcase, and it's on the
Okay,
it's on the
good.
it's on the Viacom platform. And I don't know where they have it. I haven't searched it recently, but if you get a chance, man, it's a cool. It's a short film. It's a 10-minute film, but it's a great sort of LGBTQ plus psychological thriller that ends up being something completely different. And when you see it, it'll have my writing pattern all over it.
All righty, I will start checking that or looking for it as soon as I press end on this interview. So back to Chris Rock. So recently,
And if you and Paul, if you can't find it, let me know and I'll just send it to you.
all right, thank you. So recently,
Okay.
Chris Rock hit back with his own stand-up special, and he really he hit back. I'm sure you saw it, right?
Yes, I did. I saw it twice.
What's your thoughts?
I mean, the clapback was epic. I think that he missed the callback at the end, but the clapback was epic. But in terms of comedy specials in
Hmm.
general, like when I look at comedy specials, I watch them as if there wasn't a celebrity attached to it. I watch them as if
Hmm.
it was just somebody that I didn't know, just so I can study the material. And then at the end of the day, I judge as to whether or not it's a great special based on the material alone. To take the celebrity out of it,
Hmm.
just say if Chris Rock was a dude on Carnival Cruise Line doing that same set, you ask yourself if you thought it was a great set. Before I
Hmm.
continue, let me just preface by saying this: I think that Bring the Pain was the most important comedy special in my lifetime. It was more important than the therapist.
Hmm.
It was more important than Raw because it was the first time where I'd ever seen a black man, or a black comedian really own his success. Because a lot of times, we
Hmm.
tend to downplay our success because first of all, we want to avoid haters. Secondly, we're sufferably suffering. I mean, insufferably suffering from imposter syndrome. And third, it's like you don't want to appear to be this braggart. Well, this dude fully embraced who everything that he was as a black man, money, power. The great line was he got these white neighbors. He's like, and the white people don't want to be black and they don't want to be me, and I'm rich. Nobody's ever said that before. So Bring the Pain, Bigger and Blacker. I think set such a high bar until I don't even know that, a bar that can't be reached. Just like on the checks as many boxes as it did for me personally. This last special,
Mm-hmm.
the last 10 minutes were fire. The special in its entirety, I don't think it was his best work, but I'm gonna enjoy anything Chris Rock does. I like to see him talk. I love his pattern.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it to see if he was still going to have these same patterns and rhythms and whatever, and he did. So I enjoyed it. But if it was somebody other than Chris Rock doing that same set, it would be an average set to me. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear you. I hear you. Now, in the special, he did talk quite a bit about this notion of cancel culture. Where do you
Right.
stand on that?
Uh, I'm sort of in the middle. Uh, in one way, I think it's critically unfair, uh, especially primarily for people who are creatives, who write, who can find their way, can find the humor in dark things, who can find the humor in offensive things. But what's screwing the whole concept up for comedians is there's a lot of bad humor out there. There's a lot of bad comedy out there. And people are conflating what people say doing bad comedy with what people say doing good comedy. And they're lumping that into one, big offensive template. And it's not fair to us. Like, for on some cruise ship lines, you can't say the N word on stage anymore because people think it's offensive. Well, I don't know if you saw me before, but I have 3 great bit pieces that involve the N word that are super clever that I spent a couple of years cultivating that are my closing pieces that I can't do anymore because of bad comedy. Not so much in cancel culture. And I think that people would be more forgiving if if
Mm-hmm.
if comedians were better. However, I will say that a lot of times people are just looking for stuff to complain about. And, as an administrator of anything, if I was a comedy club owner, if I was a manager or whatever, I just think that, you have to take stuff on a case by case basis. Social media means nothing to me. Dude, I don't care what people say about me on social media. I have a little special up on the platform and people are killing me because of an Alzheimer's joke that I do. But it's a super clever Alzheimer's joke. And I'm not saying anything disparaging about people with Alzheimer's. It just, and at the end of the day, the joke is on me. But people don't see that. They just go, you're poking fun at Alzheimer's. And I'm really not. And I don't think that people are super sensitive.
I saw the Alzheimer set or piece, and I loved it. And that's probably the one
Right.
thing that I can repeat, or bits of it can repeat from when I saw you back on Mardi Gras in August. I thought that was so clever, so
Right.
clever.
Thank you, man. Thank you. But the thing is, it's like if people don't have anything to talk about, they'll try and, they want attention, but they don't have any way to get it. And the only way to get it is to take something that's popular and to criticize it. And that's the way they feed their negative stimuli. And which is a super important thing. I mean, negative stimuli pretty much drives the internet. Anytime, whatever you want to say negative about somebody and whatever, and you get somebody to agree with you, oh my goodness. But in terms of me, like cancel culture has actually made me a better writer. If I'm not forgiving them, I'm not giving them credit, but it's made me a better writer. So for the stuff that I took out, instead of me, well, I did bitch and moan about it at first, but instead of me dwelling on it, I just asked myself, okay, what are you gonna do to replace this material? What are you
Hmm.
gonna do in order to replace these 3 freaking gold medal pieces that you can't do anymore just because people don't do it? And what I've done is I've replaced one of them with something brand new that I'm doing. I don't know if you saw me do my new Brittany Griner joke.
No.
Okay, so I think my Brittany Griner joke, and it's a take on LGBTQ, and it's a very positive take on it, but it has some darkness in it, and I love it, dude. People are loving it. I love it. I'm still molding it and cultivating it and trimming the edges of it and whatever. But within the next 6 months, that whole 5-minute block is gonna be a beast.
I can't wait. I can't wait
And
to
I,
see it.
and I thank cancel culture for that, because I was motivated to, okay, if you guys don't like me talking about this, well, let me talk about something else controversial, but let me do it in the way that that I do it. Let me do it in a way that, okay, y'all got to complain again to make me take this out of here, but I'm gonna get this my best effort, and I think I've come up with a pretty nice little product.
Hmm. Hmm. Let me shift gears a little bit. I met you, let's talk about cruising a little bit. I met you on Mardi Gras in August, as I said. When are you headed back out to the ocean?
Oh, I head back. I'm off this week for the festival. I'm off next week for a private party here in Houston. And then the following Tuesday, I go back to I think it's the Mardi Gras or the celebration, one of the two.
Hmm.
Yes, it is the Mardi Gras on April 3rd.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, now you've already mentioned the N word. How else does performing on a cruise ship differ from performing on land?
Um, when we had our earlier conversation, it struck me, man, when you talked about what AJ Jamal had said about how cool it is to work on cruise ships, and how people thought that
Hmm.
he was lying or whatever. Working on land is great. There's a charm to it. There's an appeal to it, and we grew up doing it. But it's been like a decade since cruise ships have said, okay, what we want to do is we want to get that same comedy club energy, and we want to put it here on cruise ships. Well, and for us, we were like, okay, well, you got to make that money work. Well, they've made that money work and then some. And so, of course, you don't have smoky bars anymore because people hadn't smoked in years. But there's just some certain things in the club that you don't have to deal with. Like, for example, I ain't got to worry about nobody having a gun on the cruise ship. You can talk all the trash you want to, and I'm gonna go out to my. You ain't going out to nothing to do nothing. You can
Uh-huh.
claim to shoot or whatever, but you ain't got. But because you ain't, there's no weapons or whatever, and that's not the most important thing. But I just like it, man. When I have to prove myself over and over again, basically the same people. It's great. It's a great challenge. 5 shows like on the Mardi Gras and Carnival, Mardi Gras and the Carnival celebration. I have to do 10 shows. I have to prove myself to 10 separate groups of people time and time again. Hey man, for the people who don't like it, the people who if comedians say they don't like it, it means that they did it poorly. But for comedians to comment on cruise ship work versus road work, if you haven't done it, then your opinion doesn't matter to me. Because we love doing it. The pay rate can be in a whole nother stratosphere. Check this out for a stat, Paul. There may be 50 comedians in this country who can sell out a theater. I'm talking about a average size, like a 2,500, 3,000 seat theater. There may be 50 comedians in this country that can do that. There's maybe another 50 comedians that can
Hmm.
sell out a comedy club in a weekend. So you got 100 comedians that are quote unquote legitimate draws in this country, right? There are probably
Hmm.
5,000 working
Hmm.
comedians in America right now. Where do all those people go? People think, celebrity comedian, there's a whole middle market of stand-up comedy that people don't even consider when they talk about. Because when you talk about stand-up comedy, people think you're one thing. They think if you're not a celebrity, then you're broke. You know what I mean? If you're not on TV, then you're not funny. If you're not Kevin Hart, you are an open micer. But the biggest piece of stand-up comedy, bro, is like this middle market with cruise ships, with corporate gigs, with college stuff. Man, people are making an easy 6 figures yearly just doing cruise ships and everything else. Man, my cruise ship work
Hmm.
allows me to do whatever I want to do. Bro, I have to do a corporate next week, but the main reason I'm home is because I took off for the Final Four because
Hmm.
I knew that my alma mater, the University of Houston Cougars, were going to be in the championship game. I took that off. I, I take off the last week in October every year because of the Houston Astros. Then not because whatever. No matter, I don't care what's happening. I take all my holidays off. I take all the birthdays
Hmm.
off. Kids, grandkids, the whole deal. I take all of that off every year just based on what I do with cruise ships and out there in the corporate community. So it's fun on the road. The only difference is it's like, after the show, you can get around, go to the movies, go to the mall, and that kind of stuff, and whatever. But just in terms of the work, you get these packed houses, you get to see thousands of people per week, and you get to prove yourself to a mass of people who, especially on Carnival, look just like the comedy club audiences out in these streets. They look the same way. Ain't that different? People think that, comedy, well, as well as I do what the perception is. Oh, you work on cruise ships, you're working for a bunch of old people. No, I'm not. And even if I did, that's just another challenge. Sometimes they are older. I love the older people. Because, you know why? Because the older people aren't as sensitive as old people, or you can say whatever you want to in front of them. They don't care. They don't care. They may fall asleep. They might have to get up early. Like if an old person, I do a show with older, like on one line, there's a lot of older people there. If they get up and leave in the middle of my show, man, I don't take offense to it at all, because there can be any of a number of reasons that they have to leave early. But like in general, I think that if you take your average comedy club on an average comedy club night and compare that to an average cruise ship comedy club on an average cruise ship comedy club night, that cruise ship comedy club audience is going to kick that regular comedy club audience in the nuts, unless you're a big draw. And I'm not a big draw. I'm not a draw. So that's the difference for me.
Let me push back on one thing you said. If you do 10 shows on the cruise ship, that's 10 different audiences. Well, almost, because when you did 10 shows on Mardi Gras, I was there every time.
Oh yeah, but well, I appreciate that. But you were there, but I'm pretty sure I had new people. And if it was 4 new people, that's a different audience. But I'm pretty sure at every show there was probably 200 different people, and then in the theater, I probably saw another 600 different people. And that's an audience. Yeah.
Yep. Now for the listeners, Billy D alluded to AJ Jamal. So let me just add some context to that. In my first book, The Joy of Cruising, my first cruise book, The Joy of Cruising, I did a feature on another Def Comedy Jam alum, AJ Jamal. And I talked about how he was now working almost exclusively on cruise ships. And he said something like he wouldn't have it any other way. And I posted an excerpt of the feature on social media, and I got a response from, a couple of snarky readers to the effect of, yeah, right. So you've kind of talked about it, but let me ask, is there a stereotype about comedians who work on cruise ships?
Well, yeah, there is. There's a stigma attached, and it's not as prevalent as it used to be, because now people are understanding. Cruise ship work is like the mistress of stand-up comedy. It's like everybody want to do it, but they don't want to tell nobody. They want to do it, under the guise of something else. There are friends of mine who I know work cruise ships that, man, I wish I could name the name, but I'm not going to do it. But I was working a comedy club in Denver several months back, and I was working with this dude that I know who does cruise ships. But when I brought it up, he had some negative stuff to say about it, and I didn't bust him out. I want to say, bruh, I know you on there too, and I don't know, maybe maybe he's not on there anymore or whatever. But dude, the money don't lie. Like I said earlier, I used to be a police officer. Like right now, I'm in the same tax bracket as a police chief. So if I've been doing stand-up, if I've been doing police work for 30 years, the chances of me being police chief, it's probably 50-50. But as a stand-up comedian, just in terms of a tax bracket, just in terms of an income trajectory, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And bro, I work maybe, I don't know, sometimes 16 days a month. So, I work as much as I want to work. And if I want to be off or whatever, I take off. I don't work no holidays. I don't work no birthdays. I don't work when I think my teams might be in the championship. I don't work during the first week of the playoffs, so I can see the Dallas Cowboys lose.
Now, I know this is a little random, but you brought it up. Say something about the transition from being a police officer to being a stand-up comedian.
Psychologically, bro, it's the same job. You go in, You control the situation. You take them. You don't let anybody take over your energy or your space. And you secure the place and you solve the problem. That's what it is, man. Same job, dude.
Uh-huh.
I ain't slinging bullets no more. That's it. But police work to me was just boring, man. I just knew that there was more for me to do in my life than just police work. And not to say that police, being a policeman is a bad job. Yeah, and another thing is, man, you always want to, in police work, man, you always want to work with the badasses. You want to work with the guys that, not afraid to go into a house when there might be a burglar inside, or they're not afraid of a gunfight. They're not afraid of whatever, retired DEA dudes or people that are notorious. And, that's especially prevalent on cruise ships because, man, you work with the best of non-celebrity comedians. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it'd be guys that you never heard of before in your whole life. And you'd be like, why have I not heard from this, heard about this person? But, it's just, I mean, again, it's basically, the same job. I mean, I was more nervous. I've gotten more nervous as a comic than I have as a police officer. You know what I'm saying? But, it's always excitement. I know when it's time for me to go to work. Like, on a police day, you have to do an 8-hour shift. You don't know when, your number is going to be called. But as a comedian, that's showtime, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever. You know when it's time for you to go to work. So kind of the same job, no guns, no whatever. But I think a lot of the stuff that I learned, as a cop, stuff like lowering my heart rate, stuff like, going in and immediately establishing a presence has really served me well as a comedian.
So, are you currently, besides your book of short stories, are you currently working on any projects, any upcoming tours, anything you want to share with the listeners?
No, dude, I don't even do those land tours, man, because, I mean, I have a special that I shot that I'm currently shopping for, network consideration. Other than that, I'm working perpetually. Like I'm a short story writer. I have hundreds of short stories that I've written, and I write constantly. I have a show, a big Juneteenth show that I booked that I'm excited about. Just because it's Juneteenth and it's in Texas and it's going to be in Galveston, and it's sort of a great historic thing that I'm doing. But dude, I'm always working. My attorney is steadily pitching my ideas and my projects, and I almost had to be a deal with Viacom last year just based on a series of short stories that I did for sort of like the Black Mirror, sort of an urban Twilight Zone that's filled with like twists and turns and dark satirical comedy. So for me, there's nothing specific right now. There are a couple of things that I don't like to talk about because I just believe in the energy of a project. I believe in like the more you talk about stuff, once you let it out here, then the less energy it's gonna have when it goes to the people it's supposed to go to. But yeah, man, I'm always working on stuff. I still do a song like once a year, to finish my jazz album that I've been working on probably for the last 8 years. So yeah.
Well, if I can be selfish, please let me know when you're going to be in North Carolina.
Oh man, will do. I was there recently. I was in Myrtle Beach recently. I was doing a theater in Myrtle Beach, not even a month ago. So I wish I'd known you before then because I could have told you about it.
Okay. How can the listeners follow Billy D. Washington on social media and the internet?
Everything is at Billy D. Washington, but I mostly bleed my soul on Facebook. Facebook is like, even if my page is too full to get in, you can still follow me on there because that's where I do most of my writing, and that's where I test out a lot of my jokes. I'll write it down, see what kind of response I get to it on Facebook, and then I'll delete it, and then I'll put it up on stage. So it's kind of funny when people will see me sometimes when I work around town. They'll see me like, oh, I saw that joke on Facebook, and this is what it's turned into. Like, yeah, that's my testing ground.
Yeah, a laboratory.
Yeah, that's my lab. Exactly. Yeah. Well put.
So, besides cruising as part of your profession, are you a traveler? Do you have anything booked?
Man, I mean, my family and I, we're going to Hawaii. We're spending 8 days in Hawaii in July. Me, my wife, my two kids, their significant others, and my two grandkids. We're all going down there for 8 day vacation. But no, man, I've been traveling my whole life. I've been all over the world with my job, so it's not a big. Uh, it's like I almost get mad when I got to pay for a vacation because I'm like, man, I've worked. I mean, I always get paid to go places. Like, on these ships, man. I've been all over the world, man. I ain't paid for none of it, and you get paid for it, which is crazy.
What's on your bucket list? Travel or life in general?
I want to be a published author. I want to be a published author. I have articles that have been published. I've done op-eds over the years for newspapers and whatever. They're easily Googleable. But in terms of that, I just want to be a published author, and eventually, I want to do an album. But in terms of a travel bucket list, I don't really have one. I don't have a Thelma and Louise type situation that nothing like that. I don't want to jump out of a plane. I don't care if I ever go diving. I don't visiting the Grand Canyon is not a part of what I want to do. Oh, and also I want to go to Africa. So the album, the book, and I do want to go to Africa. Other than that, that's it.
Well, Billy D, but before we let you go, a couple of light cruise questions, and then perhaps maybe an oddball question. So I know that you travel on cruise ships all the time, and I'm sure you take advantage occasionally of the specialty restaurants. What's your favorite cruise drink or dish or both?
My favorite. I don't drink that much, man. But my favorite cruise drink is on Carnival, man. It's in the comedy club actually. It's called the Punchliner. It's like a more
Okay.
flavorful Long Island iced tea. It'd be like Long Island iced tea with berries in it, and you
Uh
don't have to drink but one. You know what I mean? That's the kind of drinker I am. I want that drink that I don't have to drink but one of them, and my drinking for the night is over with. I'm not a fan of carrying around drinks or monitoring or babysitting drinks. I want that one drink
huh.
that's going to get me where I need to be, and then that's done. And so I don't drink on shows. Like when I
Hmm.
when I cruise or whatever, when I cruise Carnival, I drink the Punchliner. That's my favorite one. And
Okay.
the food is always going to be okay. It's two different things. Like steakhouses, pretty much on any cruise ship is going to be the best out. Whether you got to pay for it or not, it's going to be cheaper than any steak. You're going to get more value out of your steakhouse experience on a cruise ship than you will at a comparable steakhouse on land, hands down. You end up paying
Hmm.
$50 per head for a really good, at least 4 course steakhouse meal. So that's going to be the same for any cruise ship.
Hmm.
And but a personal preference is beets. I love beets, man. Yeah, see, what I do is I take
Wow.
a bag of mixed salad with me everywhere I go. And if I have a refrigerator, I'll distribute that salad. That'll be my late night meal. But what I have to have is I love beets and salad. And man, I can be at my last show, I can get a standing ovation,
Hmm.
and all I'm thinking about is getting back to my cabin and breaking out my salad and my beets.
Well, as a kid,
Yeah.
I despised beets, but as an adult, I've had some mean beet salad.
Oh man, beet salads, beets by themselves. I like them. I like them cold. I like them warm. I like them, infused. Anything that has beets in it, man, I like it.
Hmm. Hmm. Second question: what's your most memorable, or funniest, or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
Hold on, I think now tell me the categories again because I think I got one story that fits all 3 categories.
Most memorable, or
Okay,
funniest, or
okay.
most
I
embarrassing?
got one story that checks all those boxes. So Carnival used to have a cruise. I don't even know if they do it anymore. That it would overnight in Nassau, Bahamas, right? And so what we do typically
Uh huh.
is we don't stay on the whole cruise. We fly into the middle of the cruise. We work the end of the cruise. We stay on, work the beginning of the next cruise, and then we get off at a port in the middle. Did
Okay.
I make that clear?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna meet the cruise on its third day. in Nassau, and it's overnighting in Nassau. Well, everything was screwed up about my flights that day, so I got in like really late. Had an 8 o'clock show that night. I found out when I got there. I got there around 7:15. So we do R and PG shows on Carnival, right? So I got to do R and PG. So everybody's out in Nassau because they out on the night, not in town. But still, I get in the show and I got maybe 50 people in there. I rush, don't even take a shower. Just kind of wipe off, change clothes, go down, do my show. So you know me, like you've seen what I do. I like to get people's attention immediately. So I get in. I assume because every time I'm on the cruise ship, my first show is always an R-rated show. Always. You already know where I'm going.
Yeah.
I assume that it's always an R-rated show. So I get down there, or an adult show, because all my shows aren't R-rated. They're just, adult. I get down there. I go in hard at the beginning. I get the most polarizing response from this audience. Some people are falling out laughing. Other people are looking at me in shock. And I'm going, what is going on? So I see my comedy club host on the side of me, and she's gesturing, and I don't know what she's doing. She's waving her arms. I'm like, what is going on? And I don't even ask her, whatever. And so I continue with the set, and then she goes to the other side of the room, and finally I go, her name was Emily. I never forget this. Her name was Emily. I go, Emily, I stopped myself and I go, what's going on? She's like, Billy, this is a PG show. Bro, and when she says it's a PG show, my automatic response was, oh shit. And I go, oh. and then after that, I say the F word, just as a response to a response. Man, I spent that next 20 minutes apologizing to this crowd. I waited at the door and apologized to them again. And to a man, each one of them said, we knew it was something. I told them exactly what had happened. So it wasn't my fault. And I got one complaint. And to my comedy club host credit, she said, you guys should have gave him, as soon as he walked in, you should have gave him his itinerary, show itinerary. I didn't know. I'm assuming the 8 o'clock show, is going to be the adult show. Don't nobody do when I first come in. I've never done a PG show as my first show. But that night they had scheduled a PG show for my first show, and I did R-rated material during the PG show.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
The third question, the final question, I called it an oddball question, has nothing to do with cruising. I know that you have a following, of course. So welcome to the Billy D. Washington fans who are listening. Share one thing that my listeners and your fans don't know about Billy D.
I never wanted to be famous. And people think that that's a cop-out. People think that it's easy for people who aren't famous to say that. I'm sincere. Like when I did Def Jam, after that, man, I had the best representation in the world. Like my agency was the Gersh Agency, which is the top, agency for comics at the time, probably still is. And my management company was William Morris, who, and Eddie Murphy was on their roster, say less. Mm-hmm. They sent me out on these movie auditions and these TV auditions. And dude, it just wasn't, I didn't want to do it. Mm-hmm. I have nightmares about fame, about, being a household name, about not having my privacy, about, exposing my family to nuts and idiots and whatever. I've had opportunities. I remember the last conversation I ever had with a representative from my management company. I was in LA, and this was like the late 90s. And they wanted me to move to LA from Houston. And I was like, well, I had my daughter, like I'm adopted, right? And my daughter was my firstborn. So she's like the first relative I ever met. And so I wasn't going to leave my daughter, and my wife didn't want to move there. And so I'm like, they're like, well, you might need to get a divorce if you really want to pursue your dream. And so when I realized that everybody else had already established what my dream was, I didn't want anything else to do with it. It's like, I'm not a person to you. I'm not an individual to you. I'm a money-making mechanism to you. And I get that. But I wanted to be the biggest comedian that I could be. But even with that, there have been opportunities that I've had, like showcases that I've had. If you want to do this, come down and do this showcase. If you want to be on the last HBO special showcase that I was offered, I didn't even go. Mm-hmm. The last Just for Laughs comedy festival, that they asked the audition they asked me to come to. I was off, didn't even go because, dude, I've never ever wanted to be famous.
Billy D, I really appreciate you sharing that insight. That's kind of deep, actually.
Yeah. And again, people gonna say, "Yeah, right," if you post that. But sincerely, man, God has blessed me, dude. I am so happy with my journey. I have a happy, healthy family. Have a job that I do that I love. I'm doing work that I'm proud of. I get to meet people like you, who are these people who come on these cruise ships that have been there before and that identify, and for you to identify me as something special, dude, I'm honored to be on your podcast. And I've read your stuff. I mean, you're a smart, well-adjusted, albeit a little snarky, and I appreciate that you would allow me to lend some of my insight and some of my stories and my energy to your platform, man. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, Billy D, and thank you so much for agreeing to join us on the Joy of Cruising podcast. Please come back to drop some wisdom on us in the not too distant future.
Man, I talk a lot, bro. You let me know. I'll be right here.
All right, man. Enjoy the festival.
Yes, sir. I'm bringing it, dude. I'm bringing it, and like I said, this Brittany Griner thing. I can't wait to. I'm looking so much forward to working out this new thing. Or that next time you see me on a cruise, man, or next time in North Carolina, remember we talked about it on here.
Well, you've piqued my interest. All right, Billy D, you take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it, bro. God bless you.
Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted can be ordered at the link on the joyofcruisingpodcast.com, each for $16.99 plus shipping. Order the soon-to-be-released The Joy of Cruising again, also at thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com for $18.99. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. Again, the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast. Enter to win a copy of The Joy of Cruising or Cruising Interrupted while supplies last at thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or both to increase your chance to win. A winner will be announced on each show. Please leave us a review and tell a friend about us. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed the brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.